So just bear with me. There we go. Everybody, welcome to our sixth edition of Campfire Chats. Welcome, everybody. I'm joined today by one of my favorite people working in digital, Joe Hall. A few words to describe him: master auditor of websites, technical SEO expert that's helped tons of brands, including Buffer. He's worked with some of the best agencies around, including Fractal. He's an accessibility leader. He's a speaker. I was lucky enough to share the stage with him at MozCon in 2022. He's an educator. He has tons of videos on his website, hallanalysis.com, for you to check out. He's a consultant, a strategist, a writer, a builder. One of my favorite things about you, Joe, is that you're a food. No. He's like a master junk food
Yes.
aficionado.
Yeah, thank you
he's
for
this
clarifying that.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's a South Carolina Gamecock fan, a gentleman, a scholar. He
thank you.
even got a big data and social analytics certification from MIT, which is super rad. I'm
Thank
really
you.
stoked to welcome you to our edition of Campfire Chat. How you
Thank you
been?
so much, Noah. I'm great. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. It's a huge honor to be a part of this and to engage uh, your community, which I'm a huge fan of. I'm in such awe of that community and the people behind it. Um, it's amazing to see. And I'm so happy to be here. It's just a pleasure to talk with you today.
Oh, you too. So I want to jump right in. I think there's all kinds of stuff that we can talk about. I know that you came ready to launch into something that you care a ton about. So do you want to start us off with that? And then I'll sort of lead
I
us in an
can
organic direction?
yeah, we can do that. But I gave you a little preview of it already. So
Yeah.
if you want to stop me at any point and be like, Joe, you're sounding a little off, that's fine. We can go to a different topic, whatever. Uh, but basically, the big thing that I was thinking about today is and other people have spoken about this before, uh, but I've just really been thinking about this lately. And I think that as an industry and a community, uh, as SEOs or people that care about organic traffic, we are quickly approaching a situation where we don't have very many reliable sources of data anymore. Um, and it's important that we understand that, not to say that, the data we're looking at is not correct, but it's just maybe not as reliable as it once was. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's not, and when I say reliable, I don't mean it's not correct. I mean that it is simply just not known if what we see is what's really happening. And I know that sounds wacky, but I think there is some issues that have happened in the last several years that are serious causes for concern that we
Hmm.
need to think about as a community, and really kind of wrap our head around uh, what is happening, and so that it doesn't get more out of control, going forward in the future. You know.
Tell me more. Walk us through this.
Yeah, I feel like I need to provide some notes here. So basically, I feel like a lot of this for me started happening when Google Analytics 4 rolled out. Okay,
Hmm.
there was a lot of criticism with it when it rolled out. Some of it was genuine criticism. A lot of it, though, was just people not wanting to change and not wanting to go through the process of learning a new system. I totally understand that.
Hmm.
Um, but to give Analytics 4 its props where it's due, it does, in my opinion, it does give more control over the analytics experience than Universal did. It
Hmm.
takes more work to set it up. It takes more work to understand it, but I do think that it is a better piece of software than Universal Analytics. Okay. With that being said, though, my main concern with Analytics 4 is that there is an obvious inherent bias within the way it is designed, um, and the way that it provides data towards paid search channels, and that could be paid search. It could be, I mean, paid traffic channels. That could be paid search. That could be display ads. It could be paid social. But there is an inherent bias towards that paid model, and that is understandable. I mean, that is kind of the point of Google offering it for free is because their main business model is around advertising, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
it would make sense that they would put that inherent bias in there. It does, however, feel like SEO and organic traffic in general uh, has been somewhat just as of an afterthought with GA4. An example would be that when it first launched, there was no landing page report, and that there was no landing page dimension. They eventually added the dimension, and so that you could then go in and create your own report. And then eventually they added the landing page report uh, as part of the default setup under the engagement uh, collection. So that was a good step in the right direction, but overall, that was a very small thing that they kind of gave the SEO community, and I think that even with Universal Analytics, the I think the trade off that they like kind of the bone they threw to the SEO community was that you can integrate Search Console, and that somehow that fills a lot of gaps. Uh, but even people like other analytics people have said that there are large parts of Google Analytics 4 that are not available to people who don't have ads accounts. And some of those tools can be helpful for SEO. You wouldn't know it if you didn't have an ads account. So that's another thing to consider. Another issue that I've looked at is that the session duration of a default setting is way too low. It's only 30 minutes. And for SEO, that's ridiculous. It's one reason why direct traffic in most people's acquisition reporting is through the roof. Uh, it just doesn't make sense why you'd have that much direct traffic. And it's all because the default setting for session duration is only like 30 minutes or something, um, which
How
means that
many
the set.
tabs? How many
Huh?
tabs do you usually leave open?
Exactly. Like I have way too many. I have like one, two, three, four, five, six. I have seven open right now. And I literally turned on my computer maybe 20 minutes ago uh,
Mm.
to get prepared for this. So
Mm-hmm.
and that's just an average user is going to have a lot of tabs open. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to reset the duration, reset the default channel grouping on each session reset. So I think that's definitely getting in the way of organic reporting. Um, and then another thing, and this is my last point about Analytics 4, is, and we've known this forever, this is not a new thing, but it's something that not many people talk about. Last click attribution is horrible for SEO
Mm.
because generally speaking, the consumer uh, journey is with SEO is long. I mean, it usually goes through some sort of discovery phase, a research phase, a discovery phase, a comparison, and product. You know how the marketing funnel works.
Sure,
So
it's messy.
it's yeah. If you think about that, that attribution model, last click attribution, is really only geared towards like a paid experience. It doesn't work with uh, organic SEO very well, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you can tell that a lot of Google Analytics 4 is kind of all focused around that model of attribution.
Mm.
So that's my whole stick about Google Analytics 4. And it's fine for Google to create a biased piece of software. That doesn't really, that's not an example of any ill intent or any, you know, conspiracy or anything like that. That's just basic business logic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since then, though, there have been a series of things that have happened that, at very best, we can assume that this is just a oversight or lack of interest on Google's part.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, One of the things that happened was there's this issue with merchant center tagging.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you that are not aware, Merchant Center allows you to upload a feed of products if you're an e-commerce website into this Merchant Center uh, feature that allows for those products to be displayed in Merchant Center and search results, and you can easily turn them into advertisements as well. Um, there is a option within Merchant Center to do automatic tagging, which essentially adds a perimeter at the end of the product URL inside Merchant Center that helps Google Analytics report that any traffic from those URLs are coming from Merchant Center. Recently, or maybe last year, it started. Uh, Users started seeing uh, product pages ranking in regular organic results include that same perimeter. Um, and that was really weird. Like, that shouldn't be happening. That perimeter should only be showing up within Merchant Center results. Uh, when questioned about it, I think John Mueller or someone else at Google, they went and looked into it and basically came back and said that they were aware of the problem, but were not going to change it, or did not seem like there was much interest in fixing the problem. Um, and it might seem like a small, minuscule problem, but for a lot of customers that are using Merchant Center, they're now looking at analytics, and the worst case scenario, they don't know this problem exists, and so now they're seeing that their Merchant Center traffic is going through the roof when it might not really be. It might just be coming from organic results. Or if they do know the problem exists, then they may just not understand how much of that traffic is genuine or not. And I think that that's a problem as well, is that all these issues that I've talked about already, and that, I have a few more to talk about, the problem is not simply that, like, the traffic may be wrong. The problem is that we don't know if the traffic is wrong, because there's no clear guidance on if these issues are going to be fixed, or uh, if uh, if there's any sort of end result to this. Um, Another one was there is no reporting for AI overviews um, in Search Console or anywhere else. So a lot of people are just kind of left wondering, like, do I have an impact there or not? They're not sure. They've now taken a much more aggressive approach at blocking third-party tools from accessing search results with rank tracking scrapers. They've always done that. They've always done that. That's always been something they've done, but it's become a bigger issue now that you have AI crawlers probably
Yeah.
scraping their results as well. Um, and all of this, each one of these issues that I mentioned can be easily explained by someone. I know. Like, there's a Googler out there that can spin up some kind of response that makes it sound very innocuous and not really anything to be concerned about. But when you take all of what I just said, and then you consider all of the stuff that we learned in the Department of Justice case last year about how they are uh, increasing queries to drive ad impressions up, and how they have shifted results in ways to provide more clickbacks to the result landing page, and all of these things that we were told they weren't doing. We were told they didn't use uh, click data in rankings. All of this stuff we were told they were not doing. We were always told that there was a very, hard line between search quality and ad department. When we see all of this other stuff happening behind the scenes, and then all of this other, at the very best, uh, kind of a reluctance to address real issues that SEOs have, you start to wonder if maybe these are not bugs, but they're actual features
All
that
right,
they have.
all right. I
That they
gotta
have.
stop you. I
Okay,
gotta
okay,
stop you.
okay.
Hold on. So,
I'm
can
gonna take
I
a sip of coffee.
reframe? Yeah, you take a couple sips of coffee. So here's what I'm hearing: we don't have the data that we need, and what you're saying reminds me of two of my favorite people. One is Renee Bigelow, and what she would talk about is something called attribution crack, and that all we want to do is to be able to properly attribute all of our revenue to specific channels so that we can
Yes,
argue for budget and all that stuff.
yes,
That's attribution crack. And
yeah.
then another one of my favorite people is Robin Allenson. And he has a great saying when he gets in these discussions with clients where they need to know exactly where the money's coming from, his comeback to that is, are we optimizing for revenue or are we optimizing for certainty? So I guess the question that I have for you is, what's really important here? Like, shouldn't we be thinking, and I've been reading through a bunch of your writings, and it's like we always start with business goals. And the business goals typically involve money. So like, shouldn't we be thinking about that more than our ability to prove value? Or how do we kind of navigate the waters there?
Well, you're right, Noah. But all of this goes back to business value and business
Yeah.
goals because
Yeah.
because my hypothesis. Uh, and by the way, before I go any further, I'm well aware that I sound a little nutty today. Okay, so
You don't.
just
You don't.
just put
I'm
that
just
out there.
I'm
I'm
just
just
like
put
I'm sitting there
no.
thinking
I'm
as
just
you're talking and
well. I always say that because I'm getting ready to sound a little more nuttier. Um. So so uh so I think that the where we get to this business, this proving optimizing for revenue. Um. The bigger picture here is that even with this merchant center tagging issue, there's always a clear path back to buying more advertising.
yeah.
And if we are looking at ways to optimize revenue, then we need to focus our efforts on the channels that have the highest ROI. And time again, for as long as I've been doing SEO, everyone, including people that don't do SEO, says that organic traffic has the highest ROI. And so there is a very clear, in my opinion, there's a very clear uh, business objective for Google to start to cast more doubt on that fact. If Google can create more what they call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt around the SEO process, then it just puts more people into paid search, um, because they buy more ads if they don't think organic is a reliable source of
Mm.
traffic. And if we consider optimizing for revenue in that kind of uh, a lens, then if more and more businesses make that decision to go to paid search, uh, or any other paid marketing channel over organic, then it's likely we'll start to lose more money, because the ROI just won't be there like it used to be there. Um, so that is kind of like my answer to that is that fundamentally this isn't just about like optimizing for certainty or accuracy or whatever. I mean, to a certain extent, you can't really ever do that, even with the best, most honest platforms out there. You can't do that. But from a purely business standpoint, you have to ask yourself: are you being like is your view of reality influenced by the people you pay? And I think that's what's really important to think
Mm,
about with this.
because Google has a vested interest in us paying
Yes,
ads.
they
Yeah.
have a huge invested interest in the ad market, and like the
Mm,
merchant center thing. Back to that, uh, there is a much shorter path from that problem to turning those merchant center listings into ads than there is with any other organic issue. So
mm,
the fact that they're not going to fix the problem, it just leads me to believe that there's a real reason for that.
mm.
Um, and again, like I know conspiracy theories are annoying, uh, but I have always been a true blue organic SEO. I've never touched paid search, and I think because of that, maybe I'm biased. Maybe I am uh, not seeing the situation like it really is. But I also have always been pitted against paid search my entire career. It's always been about, well, if organic can't deliver, then we'll put more into ads. Um,
I like where your head's at. About this. Specifically, what I'm hearing and what I've been feeling for a long time is that doing what we do, relying on precision and accuracy is never going to win. Like we're
no,
constantly playing poker and the data is obfuscated in such a way that we'll never have real truth about anything. And because of that, we I feel like we need to make decisions based on the information that we do have. And directional information is often enough to make bets on what types of content or strategies we need to
yeah,
test
absolutely.
and execute on.
Now,
And
yeah, I mean, what you're saying is absolutely true. And to be clear, I don't think that the data we have now is unusable or taken beyond, you
yeah,
know, taken beyond uh, utility. But I think it's something that more people need to talk about at least. That
yeah.
there is definitely a bias and a conflict of interest on Google's part,
Hmm.
um, for all this.
Let's shift gears.
Okay,
I got a
yeah.
whole
Let's get
stack
off
of questions.
that. Yeah,
Oh, I got a
please.
stack of questions because you're just a fascinating guy. Okay. Um, One of the things that strikes me when I look at your website are the different services that you offer. One of them is SEO audits. Seems like that's been a cornerstone of what you've been doing forever.
Yes, yes.
Tell me about, like, what is the value of them now? Has it changed over time? How has your analysis changed over time?
Um, well, it's interesting because the search engines have caught up, I think, to a lot of the development community since I first
Hmm.
got started, at least.
Hmm.
When I first got started, they did not uh, process or crawl JavaScript. Um, it was, always just flat HTML.
Hmm.
Uh, and canonical tags did not exist. And there was a lot of issues with canonicalization, Um, so I think the search engines have evolved a lot to be better at not making these same mistakes, while crawling and indexing. So things have changed a lot in that regard. However, I still come across sites. I did this a couple days ago. I came across a site still that was using client side rendering, and none of the pages were being rendered by Google. Um,
Oof.
and I mean, oftentimes, Google's pretty good at that nowadays, but it's still an issue.
Mm.
And so I still have to check for all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So I think the audits have changed a little bit in that they do tend to be more strategic than tactical, as they used to be more like, okay, you need to fix this issue with your canonical URLs because you don't have canonical tags, or the search engine can't crawl this page because it's in JavaScript or whatever. It used to be those used to be bigger problems than they are now, and so now my audits still focus on things like that. That's like the bottom, that's like the the floor where we start. But
Mhm.
then the audit usually tends to be more strategic, and utilizing technical SEO in a strategic way. And so, for example, I'll say, look, these pages you can no index, uh, and instead let's push more of your internal link equity to these other pages. And I'll show the breakdown and flow of link equity throughout the site, and show how to better structure their information architecture and stuff like that, to uh, make a better SEO performance. But yeah, I would say it's less tactical and more strategic now.
Yeah.
The tactical stuff really still happens in every audit, but I think that the search engines have done a much better job uh, figuring out how to crawl and index just about any type of site now, um, whether or not there's problems or not with it.
Tell me what you think most other SEOs miss when they're looking at websites, because I'm sure you inherit other people's work all the time.
I do, yeah. So I think a lot of SEOs, uh, well, it really depends on your background, really. I mean, I think I like to think of SEO as broken into those three areas: technical content and links. And I think there's a lot of SEOs that do content. Um, I think there's less SEOs that do technical. With content people, I work really well with content people. Some of my favorite clients to work with are folks that do incredible content work. And they are very good at developing content and brand identities and stuff like that that bring in all of the right elements for uh, SEO.
Hmm.
Like they bring in users, they bring in links oftentimes, but they may miss a lot of technical foundations that can really punch up that content and get that content into where it needs to be.
Mm.
So a lot of people miss like doing the right optimizations for things like featured snippets and structured markup and uh, rich snippets, displays, that kind of stuff. And then a lot of people still to this day, uh, even technical SEOs, don't think a lot about the influence of information architecture and internal linking, and understanding how that has a major influence uh, on crawling and indexing and your whole SEO performance. So I see that missed out a lot on as well. You know.
I've got one for you. The best SEO tool you use is the one between your ears.
Yes.
Talk
Yes.
about
I
that.
I say that all the time. Yeah,
I
the one with.
know. I know. I did a little
Oh,
research.
okay. Thank you for. I was about to say, oh my God, we're just alike. Uh, so yeah, so the best SEO tool you can use is the one between your ears, and what that means is basically anyone can run a site through Screaming Frog, right? And Screaming Frog is amazing. It's probably my second favorite SEO tool is Screaming Frog. The one between my ears is my most favorite. Uh, but anyone can put a site into Screaming Frog, set the configuration the right way, and get almost all of the data they need, right? Um, for technical SEO. Uh, but understanding how to utilize that data the right way and to make informed decisions takes experience, and it takes understanding what works best for the search engines. A great example of this would be with Screaming Frog. You can get uh, a crawl directed map of internal links on the site, which
Mhm.
looks super cool. Uh, but if you're not familiar with the type of crawl pattern that typically aligns with uh, specific algorithm updates, um, then you wouldn't know that that pattern needs to be fixed. So, for example, um, I've noticed that a lot of the core updates, one of the similarities I see a lot is uh, having sections of content that are siloed off from the rest of the site architecture. And in that crawl graph report in Scurry Frog, it shows up as sort of like dandelions. I call it the dandelion pattern because
Mhm.
it's like these, you know, shoots of links that go out, and then like there's a huge cluster of pages over here. They're all linked together, but they're not really well linked together elsewhere. That type of pattern, I think, is indicative of a core update. And sometimes that pattern in the graph is not fully accurate of what's happening in reality because sometimes those pages do link together in ways that the crawler doesn't show in the chart. So knowing that and knowing what to look for, um, I think is incredibly valuable. Um, and knowing how to interpret uh, other metrics inside those reports in a way that provides value, I think is critical. Um, and that's what sets an SEO apart from just someone that exports CSV sheets and you know, send it in an email, like having an understanding of what the data means and how you can best utilize that data to make decisions, I think is critical. You know.
Let's go deeper here.
Okay.
So, do you have a decision making framework for how you like to think? Do you think in a structured way or unstructured?
Probably that's a good question. So I've thought about making a framework, but I don't have one. I
Hmm.
probably think sort of unstructured, uh, but usually my process is this: is I go through the steps to do the audit by collecting data, crawling the site, um, and then as I'm like making a list of all the tactical things like duplicate title tags and stuff like that, as I'm making that list of things that needs to be fixed, I'm kind of looking through the data itself, and I'm making notes on anything that looks out of ordinary, um, and anything that would indicate that there's a bigger problem at hand. Um, and then kind of going back, and then I take a break after I do all that, and come back to it and try to look at the whole thing from a bigger picture kind of lens
Hmm.
to see what are the bigger problems. I'll give you an example. I had a client. Uh, I had a client. was it last year, I guess, and they had about 3 or 4 million URLs,
Hmm.
and they were legit. It was a legit, client. Um, the content on those URLs were legit. I mean, it was, it sounds extraordinary to have that much content and it be real. But it did, they did have, decent content on those pages. The problem was that the search engines uh, had that thing, you see in Search Console called discovered but not crawled.
Yeah.
Um, and it was massive. It was like almost all their pages were like that. I think they only had about 250,000 indexed, and they wanted to fix that problem. That was what they came to me for. They wanted to get all their pages indexed. I explained to them, well, at 2 million pages, you're not likely to get all of them indexed, but we could get more than 250,000.
Yeah.
Um, so through, I went through the standard process to do an audit. Um, in doing that, I realized that they had uh, on the pages that were not getting indexed, most of them had a massive number of requests per page. So it was like,
Mm.
on average, it was like 97 requests per page.
Mm.
Um, and so I explained to them that, this is when you talk about crawl budget, and the amount of crawl budget the search engine has to go through to index a page like this, a site like this, you're not looking at like 2 million URLs. You're looking at more like 200 million because you've got on average about 93 requests per page. And they had like, I shouldn't, well, it doesn't really matter. I'm not telling you their name. But they had like these ridiculous like little sprites all
Yeah.
over the top. It was like 26 little PNG files. They had about 30 something JSON files that loaded through a Next.js framework. It was just over the top. Way too many requests that needed to be made. And
So is this about the same time that you posted on social? Does anyone have a cool and easy tool for checking requests per page? Because I
yeah, I
saw
think
that
that's
on
right.
Twitter.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. God, man, are you stalking me? This is a little
No,
bit
I just
weird.
wanted to come
Yeah,
prepared.
but you did a good job.
I did a
Uh,
bad job promoting the episode, so I wanted to kill it in the room.
well, that's cool. That's fine. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That is exactly around the same time that happened. Uh, and by the way, you can get that number with Screaming Frog. I
Mm.
just the number, the request per page is in Screaming Frog, and then you can just do the average in the
Mm.
spreadsheet. Um, but anyway, so yeah, I mean, that's part of my process is this, going through the normal steps, and keeping any issues or problems that the client's having in the back of my mind while I'm doing that, and then looking through the data while I'm uh, going through the steps and finding evidence that could contribute to those problems. And so the solution for that client was to consolidate their sprites into one PNG. And you can do that, and then you can like use CSS to basically move the PNG as a background. But
Mm.
you just load one PNG for like 30 images. Do that, and then preload that in the HTML, so it's preloaded. That cuts down on their cumulative layout shift like crazy, because all those little sprites were loaded individually. Um, and then I said you need to open up some of these JSON files. About half of the JSON files that are being loaded through Next were blocked by robots.txt. So I had them open that up, and then I had them. What else did I have them do? I had them try to minimize the number of requests per page. So if there's any way you could consolidate some of the JSON into one request, so you're not just pulling like 30 JSON files, per page, that would be ideal. And so their engineer team went back and they started implementing that. And after about a month, we started seeing indexation rise significantly. Um, and I don't know where they're at now, but it really did make a huge change and difference. But all of that was a result of going through the data with a fine tooth comb while I'm going through the normal steps of everything, making notes of what's going on, keeping their specific problem in the back of my mind, and understanding that the entire audit is meant to fix that one problem, you know, and keeping those issues in the back of my mind as I kind of make notes for what's going on. So I guess it's not really structured, but like I said, it is like that tool between my ears is the most important tool because like I wouldn't have known to identify certain things if it weren't for that experience and that knowledge. You know,
But
uh,
also, it's like designing a process in a way that allows you to systematically uncover things, and
yes.
it right like that's pretty rad.
So that's my but so that has actually been something I've thought about for the last 5 years. Can I design a process that can replace me? Right.
Mm.
So like, can I design a process where I can hire someone to basically replace me if they just follow this process? And I've always kind of come to the conclusion that I can probably have them do like 60 or 70% of the work, but I'd still have to go back myself and go through my own process uh, to fill in the gaps, because, like I said, I can't pull that tool between my ears out and give it to someone. Um, it's stuck there. So I have not done that yet. I have not replaced myself yet. Uh,
We got all kinds of questions in the
oh
chat, so I
yeah,
want
let's
to I
hear
want
let's
to
hear the
throw one in.
questions.
So, how many requests is too many?
It just depends, man. I mean, it depends on the
As
site.
few as possible. I mean,
As few
it's
as possible is great.
yeah.
The example I provided just now was, like I said, they had 2 million pages. It really comes down to, uh, we've heard Google talk about this before that most websites don't need to be concerned about crawl budget. I think that's true, uh, but I also always tell clients like, yes, it's true. You don't need to be concerned about crawl budget as a metric or as a concern,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that just because you don't have diabetes, you should eat like 12 cookies during lunchtime, right? So, if you still need to be kind of mindful of things like average requests per page. I think that most sites can get away with, I don't know, like 20 or 30 per
Mhm.
page, but really as few as possible is better, because that's going to really help uh, users and crawlers access the page.
I'll never forget working on this one website that was an e-commerce website that was selling road bikes, and they had a tiled grid that was probably 1,000 pixels by 400 pixels with, I don't know, 8 pictures in there. Each one's 200 pixels wide or
Yeah.
whatever. However, each one of those images was 5,000 pixels wide
Oh
and
my god.
scaled, and the
So
page
they're
was
like
like
two megabytes
six.
each or something.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
a 65 megabyte page weight, and
Yeah.
the site had ranked number one for like Specialized, which is a brand, road bikes. And then when they got a new photographer who didn't know what he was doing and didn't downscale the images to be 200 pixels or whatever the max width they'd ever be used, all of a sudden their rankings went from, like ranking number one to ranking 28. And
Yeah.
all their revenue tanked like overnight. Super
I think
brutal.
and that's a good point. When it comes down to like page performance and page speed and core web vitals, uh, it's I don't. I always tell clients, you don't need to obsess over that. You don't need to have a perfect score. but you absolutely should not go to the extreme in the other direction, right?
Mm.
So, like, you don't need to be perfect, but you also don't need to have a page that is 65 megabytes either. I mean, that's just too much, you know? So, really, just keep it in check. It don't need to be perfect, but it does need to be kept in check, you know?
Tell me, what does a bulletproof infrastructure, you can't see, I got an air quote here. What does a bulletproof infrastructure look like?
That's a really good question. I think a bulletproof infrastructure is going to be different for every site, but it is definitely going to be one that has the path of least friction for the crawler to
Mhm.
every page on the site. I'm a big fan of HTML sitemaps, and I think if they're done correctly, they can be really effective, not only for SEO but also for user navigation. Um, I think that for SEO, having an information architecture that allows for the path of least resistance for the crawler is critical, but also it has to help the user as well. And I used to get really upset when people would talk about like user experience for SEO. But I am a huge advocate for it now, not only because of how the search engines now render pages completely during indexation, but also because you have no idea who visiting your site is a potential link magnet or a potential linker, right?
Mm.
And the easier the site is to use, and the more accessible and the more easy to access content, the more likely that content is going to get linked to. And that's critically important for that other part of SEO. Is part of your uh, I guess theoretical conversion model should be how much links are we getting out of the traffic to the site, you know, because that's the other part of SEO is the links, and creating a website that's easier to use where people can find what they're looking for as fast as possible. It's just going to increase the likelihood that you get those links.
Mm.
So that's also a critically important thing. But I think those are the two things. Uh, it's for users and then also for the crawler, the path of least resistance for everything.
Let's talk about a couple more things. Keep this answer super short. How many lunchtime cookies is too much?
No comment.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah,
Uh,
that doesn't need an answer.
yeah, sorry, Mark Alves, but
Okay.
we refuse to comment. Okay,
No.
so the next thing I want to talk about is tied to what you were just talking about. What the hell did you build that gathered 2 million links?
What?
You built a widget on a site that gathered something like 2.4 million
Oh,
links. What
God,
the heck was that?
you've really done your research. You should go on that show Hot Ones. Uh, uh, so yeah, that must have been a really old. Was that an old tweet I put out there?
I don't remember. It stuck out though. I couldn't drop that. I had to learn more
So
about that.
yeah, so I can't tell you specifically what it was, but it was a WordPress widget,
Hmm.
or a WordPress. Yeah, it was a WordPress widget. Uh, and back in the day, and actually, there's a little bit of a history behind this. So back in the day, uh, the plugin team at WordPress.org were not very SEO savvy, and you could uh, insert links into plugins, and uh,
I did it too.
yeah, so you could do that, and you just create a plugin, upload it to the repository, and then in the footer of the site, there's a link that goes somewhere, um, and it would, the way that I did it was not. It was super authentic in my mind because the link essentially just went back to uh, the site that created the plugin,
Hmm.
and back to the plugin landing page, so they
Hmm.
could download the plugin.
Hmm.
It wasn't, it wasn't like a real commercialized link or anything like that. It was
Hmm.
very like authentic link. But that link basically generated about 2.4 million links. I can't remember the number of domains that it came from because, of course, it was a site-wide link on every
Hmm.
site. So, you know, it was a massive amount of links, but I don't remember the actual number of websites.
Mm.
Um, Now, I'll give you a little bit of a backstory behind that. So I did that, and I was tickled pink with it because it worked so well, and my client was super happy with it. They went through the roof in their rankings after that kind of taking off. The plugin was very popular, though. I will mention that, and also they put a little bit of public relations behind it, so it
Hmm.
really caught wind.
Hmm.
Um, However, after I did that, I started noticing other things popping up, and like I started noticing uh plugins to add the Google Plus button to sites, and then like all of a sudden after you added it to your site, there was like a link in the bottom to like an online casino or something.
Ugh.
There was that kind of stuff going on,
Yeah.
and back then I was really infatuated with open source. I still am. I still am just in love with open source. But back then, I really felt like a sense of duty to protect the WordPress project. And I knew a lot of the core developers back then. I still know some of them. Um, and so I started to help report those issues to the plugin team because they were not versed in SEO and they
Mm.
did not understand why those links. I mean, they could understand that it was like a. They looked at it as like a free ad, basically. They didn't look
Yeah.
at it as like manipulated search results. So I worked with some of the people on that team back then, and now they have much stricter guidelines for plugins and links found in plugins, and so now I don't think you get away with that at all. But in large part, I feel like it was because of my early education with that team. Like, hey, you guys need to be a little lookout for this. Uh, and I will admit, I did not, in that vein, I did not mention my own plugin, but but I definitely wanted them to identify anything coming forward in the future.
Okay, I got one for you. Keep your answer short on this one.
Yeah, we're coming up to an hour. Yeah.
What's your favorite underappreciated national food chain?
Oh my god. Uh, I don't know if they're national, but I really love Bojangles.
Mm.
Um, and I also really love Arby's. I Arby's gets a lot of hate, uh, but I like them. I really love Bojangles too, though.
Okay.
I don't know if Bojangles is national though. Is it?
I don't know. Hey,
It
so I got
could,
a question. I
okay.
went to Tech SEO Connect last October,
Okay. Cool.
and I was introduced to boiled peanuts. And I know you love
Oh,
boiled peanuts. Help me
yeah.
understand what's cool about them because I had a hard time getting into it.
Where is Tech SU Connect? Where is that at?
Raleigh, North Carolina, last
Oh,
year.
okay. Okay. So you're in the good part of the country. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I live in South Carolina, and yeah, if you were in Raleigh, you probably had access to boiled peanuts. I love boiled peanuts. There's a handful of different types you can get, but it's just you know, it is what it said. It's boiled peanuts. They are kind of salty. They have a real good what do they call umami flavor or
A
uh
wet, salty slime all
yeah.
over your fingers.
It's
that you
very
really
good.
have to want to deal with.
Yes, it's very good. I love it.
So
It
that was the hard part for me, was this consistently wet, salty slime that I just couldn't get off
well,
my
I don't know. I
face.
don't know why. It sounds like do you know who made the nuts?
I don't know, but we went out with Matthew K, who's a
Okay,
total foodie, and he was like, "This is the best restaurant in Raleigh,"
so
and we
so
walked
so the
across
nut.
the city to get
Okay,
there.
so the nuts were at a restaurant.
Yeah, totally.
Okay,
They boiled them
so
there.
I will say that if they were slimy, it means that they had been sitting out for a while. Uh,
Ooh,
because wait, I mean it's peanuts; they're not going to go bad. But
yeah,
but still, like if you get them fresh right out of the boiler,
yeah.
they're not slimy at all.
Okay,
But still, like I will pull out a bag of whole peanuts out of the refrigerator, and there will be slime on them, and
yeah.
I will still eat them.
Okay. One of the things that's always super attracted me to you is just how you're a builder. You and I both love creating things,
Yes.
and we get a lot of value from that. So I want to know how you're using LLMs these days, what your coding kind of setup looks like. Are you using Cursor, Windsurf, VS Code? Like, what kind of LLMs are you using, if any?
So I'm primarily using ChatGPT.
Okay.
I have an account there. I
Hmm.
really like it. I probably would really love Cursor,
Hmm.
but I still use Atom.
Hmm.
Um, for anyone that follows me on social, you know by this point that I am kind of grumpy all the time.
No,
And my personality
no.
is yeah, my personality though is tends to shy away from new things.
Mm,
And I know that Cursor is pretty great, and I know a lot of these new AI editing tools are awesome. But
mhm.
I just haven't gotten into them yet. I started using ChatGPT for content stuff and other things, and playing around with the API. And then I tried using it for code, and the coding has gotten a lot better.
For
Uh,
sure.
it has gotten so much better. Um, and so I have used it for some coding work. I think of it in the same way that uh, I used to go like search on Google, uh, like for example, I might search on Google how to just an example. I might say like how to loop through a multi-level array in PHP, right? I used to type something like that into Google to see like what Stack Overflow said, that kind of thing. Instead, I'll type that into ChatGPT now, and it will give me as good of a answer as Stack Overflow did. Now that is not
Minus the
saying,
arguments.
huh?
Minus the arguments.
Minus the arguments. And now that is not to say that Stack Overflow is the best answer either, but
Mhm.
it is, I think, when it comes to coding, I think that ChatGPT does provide a good enough solution to build out at least a proof of concept, and a working application uh, that is ready to be a viable product. And then later, if you want to change it, refine it, optimize it, then yeah, you can do that. But to get it started to developing a project, I think that LLMs are definitely capable and are a good place to start. I don't like the idea of the no code people using LLMs
Yeah,
because
I
it
agree.
seems
Actually,
so dangerous. I've seen so
you have
many.
no idea what it's producing. Yeah.
You have no idea what it's producing. I've seen so many instances where the code will leave it open for SQL injections. There's security problems. I mean, it's just stuff that if you have coding experience, you know that that needs to be fixed.
Mm,
But if you are a no code person, it just seems so dangerous to not have
mm.
that level of experience and use AI in that way.
Rad. Okay, we got to wrap up. I want to do a couple things. I want to read one of my favorite tweets that I read from you. And then I'd love it if you could share how people can follow you. And then we'll kind of take it from there and I'll do a final wrap up. But one of my favorite tweets of yours was, the older I get, the more confident I am that no one really knows anything about anything. We're all a bunch of weirdos trying our hardest to act normal, whatever that is.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah. I mean that.
Um,
Do you want me to comment on that, or
sure, sure.
so that actually goes back to the beginning of this talk? I think that from an SEO perspective and a data perspective, I find myself questioning things so much now, and the things that I thought I knew um, related to data, but also to work and life and everything.
Hmm.
I find myself questioning as I get older.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that that's probably natural for most people to go
Hmm.
through this period of confidence when you're young. And then the older you get, to start to question that confidence going forward. And it doesn't mean that, like, I'm unsure of myself or anything like that. It just means that uh, the ways that of doing things, and the ways that we thought about the world maybe in our youth, are not so concrete, you know.
Mm,
And we need to have a more open perspective and an open mind to the way
I
the
agree.
world works, you know.
Joe,
Yeah.
this has been an amazing hour. Love it. Can you let everybody know how to follow you on socials?
Yeah, sure. You can find me at Joe Hall on Twitter.
Hmm.
And then I'm on Blue Sky as well. And my Blue Sky handle is, it's so complicated. I made it too complicated, but I think it's bsky.hallanalysis.com.
Mm,
Uh, I should have just used my name. I don't know what I was thinking. But anyways, I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where I have more serious conversations
hmm.
about SEO.
Yeah.
My other socials, I'm not really that serious on.
Hmm.
But LinkedIn, I have more serious conversations. But yeah, those are the best places. Oh, and then also, clawanalysis.com is my website. I don't update the blog as much as I'd like to, but there's a blog and there's some tools and some education content in there. So yeah, check me out on those places.
Awesome. You rock. So
Thank
I
you.
get to just say a couple quick words of thanks to everybody. I want to thank all of our viewers. I want to thank Amy because she's our amazing producer, rocking behind the scenes. I also want to thank all of our community partners who've made this all possible. One of which is AirOps that we're going to be joined by in 2 weeks on our next community chat. And the last thing is, I want to thank all of the members because we just crossed 4,000 members today,
Wow,
which
that's
is
awesome.
just super rad. I was like,
That's so
it's a
cool.
vanity metric among vanity metrics, but like
Yes,
it was super fun.
that's so
Uh,
cool.
yeah, it's neat. So, everybody, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks in the next one. And we will see you soon. Okay, so hang out with us for a minute because
Okay.
we need to make sure that you're all uploaded. You're uploaded.